Hi, friends. I'm here to talk to you about the house church message for this week. As you know, if you've been with us, Cody finished up with a podcast on 1 Peter last week, talking about being clothed with humility. And since we haven't really started a new book, he asked me if I would kind of bring just a topical message for the house churches. And in light of everything that's going on in these days, I thought I'd talk a little bit about how I've been feeling about these last several months. And I've been using a word for probably the last 7 or 8 months called unprecedented. Unprecedented times during the first COVID setback and shutdown, and then unprecedented with the fires, and now again heading back into COVID restrictions. It just seems unprecedented. And in my devotions this morning, I was thinking about a verse that I'd read somewhere in the Old Testament where it says, "You've not been this way before." So I pulled out my concordance, looked it up, found it in Joshua chapter 3. As Joshua is preparing the people, God tells him, hey, tell the people to make sure they follow the ark, follow the symbol of God's presence, because they've never been this way before. And I feel like that's really a word for me and for us, is that in order to keep from getting lost, from getting distracted, from getting confused, fearful, angry, frustrated, impatient, I could go on, the answer is always the same, is get back in line, following the Lord, simply keeping our eyes on Jesus. So that was good for me this morning. And then since I was in the area with my Bible opened, I looked at the first chapter of Joshua, and I thought it might be a good topic for us to discuss tonight for your small group to gather, your house church, and kind of explore a little bit of these times in our lives when we're asked to take a step we've never taken before. We're asked to go a direction we've never been before, take on responsibilities we've never had before, launch out into ministries and opportunities or ventures that we really have no experience, and we don't have a guide necessarily. We just have a sense and a direction, and that certainly was true of Joshua. Let me quickly set the stage for you. You remember he was born into the house of a slave. As a slave in Egypt, he learned what it was like to serve at the whim of someone else. Do this, do that, go here, go there. But he also experienced the incredible freedom that came from the blood of the Lamb applied to the doorposts there as that last plague launched the children of Israel out into their wilderness experience. And then for 40 years, Joshua, along with the rest of the children of Israel, wandered around the wilderness. Now, Joshua and Caleb, if you remember the story, had faith to move in much earlier than that. But because of the disobedience, because of the slowness of heart, if you could say, the stubbornness of the people that Joshua was surrounded by, he had to just spend his time wandering. He ended up being chosen by Moses to be kind of a second, an assistant. In Numbers, we read that Joshua was actually born with the name Hoshea. Hoshea means Jehovah helps or assists. But when he got around Moses, Moses changed his name. Moses said, now, that's who you used to be. You got a little assistance from Jehovah. I'm going to call you Yahshua. Jehovah saves. It's more complete, and it's certainly a foreshadowing of the New Testament name of Yahshua, which is Yeshua, Jesus. Jesus saves. And so as we look at Joshua's life, Joshua, the book, begins with this sad transition between what was under the leadership of Moses and what is coming under the leadership of this servant, this administrator, this whatever you would call Joshua, the second to lead the people of Israel into the promised land. Here's how it reads in Joshua chapter 1. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spoke to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, you and all this people, to the land which I am giving them, the children of Israel. Let's just stop for just a moment. In order for Joshua to move ahead, there were some things that had to be let go of. Moses and his leadership style, Moses and his taking the point and all of the resistance directed towards him. Now all of a sudden Moses is set aside. But he gave Joshua some legacy that I think must have played a big part in his early life as now the new leader of Israel. It says that Moses was the servant of the Lord. In Hebrew, literally the slave of the Lord. Interesting terminology that Joshua would choose to use about his mentor, his leader, Moses. A slave, one who serves at the whim under the direction of someone else. Now, slavery is certainly not a good thing. But when you attach that metaphor to the Lord, and Moses being the servant of the Lord, the one that was directed by the Lord, it gave Joshua, I think, a divine picture of his place, of what he was supposed to do, of who he was supposed to be. But now watch what happens as it goes on. God gives Joshua this very specific message. And he says, every place that the sole, verse 3 now, every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given you, as I said to Moses, from the wilderness, this Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, to the sea, great sea going down towards the sun, shall be your territory. And let's stop again for just a moment here. Look at this incredible promise that God has given to him. In order for Joshua to really pick up and move ahead in this adventure, this venture of faith that he was being called to lead, he had to do so, and so do you and I, with a sense of divine purpose and promise. If we're being asked to do something by God, we can rest assured that he has given us and will give us all that we need in order to accomplish it. What I love about this, when you read it carefully, it's past tense to God, but future tense to Joshua. Joshua, I have given you all the land which you shall tread upon. Joshua's place was to believe that God had done it, and then to obey it by stepping out in obedience to it. Listen, there's a lot of New Testament principles that are exactly the same here, where you and I have been called to believe something that we can't prove because the Bible declares it, because God has said it, and then to step out in obedience to it. Now, this didn't come easily for Joshua, nor does it come easily for most of us. He was being asked to do something he'd never done before, to go somewhere he'd never been before, to lead people he'd never led before. And he needed this solid foundation upon which to step out. Confidence, not in himself, but confidence in his calling, confidence in his divine inheritance of the promise that God had given to him. I encourage you to stop for just a moment and think about some experience you've had with the Lord, some verse that jumped out at you, some promise that God has given to you that you can cling to, that will help you stay true to the destiny that God has given you. God gave him this personal promise in verse 5. He said, no man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you nor forsake you. Does that verse sound familiar to you, the last part? Hebrews 13 tells us that we have the same promise from God, that he will never abandon us. He will never leave us. And we can look to the people ahead of us in this pilgrimage of faith and see that God was faithful to them. God led them through ups and downs, in and outs, good times, bad times, and he'll do the same with us. But then he got real specific with Joshua, and I wanted to make sure you heard this from my heart, because it spoke to me, and I hope it speaks to you. God commanded him in verse 6, Joshua, be strong and of good courage. For this people you shall divide as an inheritance the land which I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong. That's the second time he repeated it. And very courageous. That's the second. That you may observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may prosper wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate in it day and night, that you may observe to do according to all that is written in it. For then, notice that, the connection of the do this, understand this, stay in this, for then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. Have not I commanded you? This is the third time now in just several verses God says this, be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid, nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Now, I'm of the opinion that God doesn't stutter. So when he repeats something, it's not because he didn't say it clearly the first time, but rather because he, for emphasis' sake, wants us to take it in, and take it in, and take it in. When you tell someone not to be afraid, especially if you're God, it's because you know that deep in their heart they're struggling with insecurity and can I do this and will I be successful and how am I ever going to pull this off? I don't know exactly what God is asking you to do or where he's stretching you or what challenges are facing you. I do know in my own life, even at this stage of my walk with the Lord, I'm being asked to take some steps I've never taken before, to go some directions I've never been before, to follow him in a path that I've never experienced before. That gives me pause. And this is why this verse spoke so powerfully to me. God says, you need to look in your own heart, Josh, and recognize that weakness and fear are tied together. Strength and courage are also tied together. Not self-motivated courage, not I can because I think I can, or as our culture says it, if I see it, I can be it. I'm not talking about this positive affirmation. I'm talking about hearing from God saying, you can do it. I've given you a promise. I've given you a destiny. I've given you a direction. Now walk in it. When you fear that, weakness, insecurity, instability, uncertainty, second-guessing yourself comes in. But when you say, I don't know why he chose me, but he chose me. I don't know how he's going to do this, but I know he is. Then you can begin to find strength rising up from within you. Not your strength, not you becoming stronger, but tapping into the strength that God provides. Where does that come from? For Joshua, the answer was in the book of the law. Stay in the book. Learn the things that God has declared. Learn the examples of the life of Abraham. Learn the examples of the mistakes of the patriarchs. Learn the faithfulness of God in bringing his people out of Egypt. Learn from what Moses experienced on the mountain. For you and me, the answer is a little different, but the source is the same. Get in the book. This is where faith grows. Faith comes by hearing by the word of God. Romans 10:13 tells us, 10:17. And we need to be in I need to be in the word of God because that's where my faith, that's where my strength begins to grow. I encourage you, spend some time thinking about your disciplines regarding the word of God. Are you spending some time in it? I don't mean just, now I lay me down to sleep, a bag of peanuts at my feet, kind of a shallow approach to it. I'm talking about reading a verse, meditating on a verse, letting the Lord do something in you to take it a little deeper and a little deeper and a little deeper. I would suggest if you've never done this, start with 5 minutes. Can you commit to 5 minutes? 5 minutes in the morning to open the Bible, read, let God stop you when it's time to stop, and think about what he's telling you to do. So with your little group tonight, as you guys are gathered in your homes, which, by the way, I'm proud of you for doing that. That's what we need. We definitely need each other during these days. Community is so critical to the ongoing of our faith and the strengthening of our family of God. But I wanted you to talk a little bit about your spiritual inheritance. Question that you might ask each other. Has God given you a specific verse or calling on your life? Do you sense in some of your readings and the way your history with the Lord, has God given you a specific, this is what you're to do, This is where I'm sending you. This is what I'm calling you to. Now, you may not know exactly where it's going to end up, but maybe you have some sense. Share that with one another. Secondly, do you struggle with fear? Now be honest. Do you struggle with anxiety or uncertainty? How does it affect you? Does it limit you? Does it cause you to kind of pull away from the Lord and find other things that you're using to cope with these insecurities? So the second question you can talk about with each other is, do you struggle with fear? And the third, and I think this is really critical, what strategy can you employ to fight your fear, to face it, to overcome it, and to step out in obedience? Now, granted, you and I don't have this great task that Joshua had, but for us, success is still dependent upon hearing God's purpose, claiming God's promise, walking in obedience to this commission that He's given us, staying in the book so that we keep ourselves centered, focused on Him, and then staying with it to win it. Faithfulness, faithfulness, faithfulness. Doing the same thing over a long period of time. May God bless you as you walk with Him. Spend some time talking with your small group. We'll be back at another time to talk to you about some more. God bless you.